From there, let's check out the happenings in Sudan now. Gunfire explosions have echoed across Khartoum, the Sudanese capital, for the 20th straight day. Witnesses reported loud blasts and exchanges of fire on the streets. Heavy bombardments also rang out in the adjoining cities of Udmoran and Bahri. The army said that it was ready to abide by the new 7-day ceasefire, but there's no word from the rival paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF. The military said it killed RSF fighters and destroyed a number of vehicles belonging to the rebels after clashing with the group in the Bahri military region. It is also reported that trying to push the RSF back from the area around the presidential palace and the army headquarters. Sudan's eruption into conflict has left international consumer goods makers racing to shore up supplies of gum arabic and everything from fizzy drinks to candy cosmetics. Industry sources say in their manufacturing process that food and drink companies use a spray-dried version of the gum that is powder-like, while cosmetics and printing manufacturers may be able to use substitutes. There is no alternative to gum arabic in fizzy drinks. There is where it prevents ingredients from separating. About 370 Nigerian nationals, majorly students, have been successfully evacuated back to Nigeria from Sudan through the Aswan airport in Egypt. This first batch of Nigerians were airlifted by the Air Force C-130 provided by the Nigerian Air Force and the Air Peace flight from Egypt. The two planes landed within minutes of each other at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja around 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports.
The first aircraft to land is the Air Peace flight carrying 274 passengers. About 15 minutes later, the Air Force C-130, also carrying about 90 passengers, lands. Government officials who are on ground to receive the returnees briefed the media about the journey so far.
We have 2 flights today of 364 people. We are expecting maybe about 4 flights tomorrow. It's a continuous process. Getting to where they are, sending them supplies, food, water, bringing them out is a very, very hectic challenge. But we thank God with the help, with the assistance, full backing of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. We are here today. It's a process, but we have started and we are getting there.
We are glad and we give thanks to Almighty Allah that all of them are back safely. No life was lost. This is the most important thing. All the efforts that have been put in place has not gone in vain.
There were a lot of delays, there were logistics issues, but alhamdulillah, with the interagency collaboration, we're able to have the 2 sets here, and everybody will be back. And war is a terrible thing. I mean, we never witnessed war in our country. I mean, the war in Sudan be over soon.
One of the parents of some of the students speaks on behalf of them.
Alhamdulillah, we're traumatized hearing the news of this breaking out of the crisis, and everybody's annoyed, everybody's just tense. But alhamdulillah, today we are happy. In fact, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to say. Every parent is happy, and we're thanking the federal government of Nigeria, thanking the humanitarian and every other person that play a key role in bringing back our children.
Some students also speak on their ordeal.
We face so many problems. We see what we have never seen in our life in the war there. So when we try to call the Nigerian attention and the Nigerian attend to us, so we are actually so happy. We are so very, very happy now to see us back home safely.
I feel like, we are back to home and we feel safe, especially at the time we breathe fresh air, and then we are safe. There is no sound of any grenade or any bullets, and then we are safe. We can get water to drink. We can eat now, we can sleep in peace, so thank God for that.
4 other planes are expected to convey more Nigerians back to the country today in continuation of the evacuation exercise, as the federal government says no Nigerian will be left behind. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on Sudan's warring parties to pursue the path of peace and reconciliation in order to avert a humanitarian crisis that could engulf the greater Horn of the African region. Mr. Guterres, who spoke at a media briefing in Nairobi, Kenya, said the conflict that broke out in Sudan in mid-April remains a grave concern, adding that laying down of arms among combatants is urgent.
All parties must put the interests of the Sudanese people first, and that means peace, a return to civilian rule, allowing for the development of the country. Aid must be allowed into Sudan, and we need secure and immediate access to be able to distribute it to people who need it most. Civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected, and humanitarian workers and assets must be respected. I call on the international community to support the Sudanese people in their pursuit for peace and the return to the democratic transition.
And away from the war in Sudan, almost 258 million people in 58 countries faced acute food shortages last year due to conflicts, climate change, effects of coronavirus pandemic, and of course the war in Ukraine. And that's according to the United Nations report, a sharp rise from 139 million the previous year. The Global Report on Food Crisis, an alliance of humanitarian organizations founded by the UN and the European Union, says the people face starvation and death in 7 of those countries. And that's Somalia, Afghanistan, Burkina Faso, Haiti, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Yemen. According to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, that report found that the number of people facing acute food insecurity and requiring urgent need aid by 258 million had increased for the 4th consecutive year, a stinging indictment of humanitarian failure to implement UN goals to end world hunger. Mr. Guterres said the rising poverty, deepening inequalities, rampant underdevelopment, the climate crisis and natural disasters also contributed to food insecurity. Rain Porcelain, Director of Emergencies and Resilience for the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, said an interplay of causes were driving hunger across those regions.
The latest figures on the global acute food insecurity situation paint a very concerning picture. And in 2022, this means that over 250 million people, 258 million people, were in a situation of acute food insecurity. What we see is that even in situations characterized by conflict and violence, it's really this interplay of issues and overlapping of the impacts of violence on top of economic challenges, not least driven by sort of the ripple effects from the COVID-19 pandemic that the world has been feeling. And then, of course, climate challenges, the climate crisis and everything that that means in terms of extreme weather events, whether that's extreme temperatures, whether that's issues related to water scarcity, to drought, or whether that's issues even related to flooding, excessive water in certain places. Given that Ukraine and also the Russian Federation play such a significant role in terms of global food systems when it comes to the production of a series of key food commodities or the production of key agricultural inputs such as fertilizer, any limitations on ability to produce or export impacts prices globally, has impacted prices globally.
Let's talk to David Awurawa, who's professor and head of Department of Historic and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Thank you very much and welcome to The World Today.
Thank you.
Let's begin with what you make of the UN report on global food crisis. I mean, so many figures going around about insecurity of food in some regions. Can you tell us what your perspective is on this one?
Well, the report is correct. The figures are largely accurate. And it is easy to explain why the number of people without access to food around the world, has expanded tremendously in the past couple of years. The figure rising from 193 million to 258 million, between 2021 and 2022. The last year where things Sorry for the disruption. The last year where things seemed normal around the world was 2019. In 2020, we had the coronavirus, pandemic, which disrupted, economic activities, including production of food and other food, agricultural, equipment and inputs. The thing continued through 2021 and then 2022. And then in between, we have had wars in, many countries across the world. And then, the weather condition continues to be atrocious, sometimes too much rain, sometimes drought in parts of the world. And if you look at the countries listed, there are countries that have experienced conflict, mainly Somalia, Yemen, South Sudan, Burkina Faso, and then Nigeria. So the report is largely correct. The food shortages around the world has expanded, and the causes are also very well known. And these are things that need to be tackled, for the food crisis to be resolved.
And what are the immediate implications of this?
Well, the immediate implication is that many people will not be able to feed. Quality of life will reduce. Unfortunately, violence, leads to less amount of food produced, and less amount of food produced also causes violence. It's a vicious circle. And of course, we all know, as analysts have said, access to food is basic. Scholars describe it as ontological and non-negotiable. When we don't have food, it causes a lot of problems within, and of course, crisis, violence, and all. That is why an urgent solution needs to be found, such that by the time 2023, as we move on in this year, we'll have some better, condition. Of course, unfortunately, the war between Russia and Ukraine may make that difficult to achieve.
Now, how do countries scale up efforts and address the root cause of this in order to curb food crisis? I mean, if it gets to a level where there's serious crisis, it will be a big problem. So what do you advise for countries to do?
A couple of things. An urgent solution must be found to the war between Russia and Ukraine. As we have seen, Ukraine is like food baskets. Russia too, production of fertilizer and all that. Some solution that is urgent will need to be found to that war. In addition to that, other countries around the world that have been plagued by violence, like Nigeria, Yemen, Burkina Faso, South Sudan, and now Sudan, urgent efforts need to be found to be able to resolve all of these crises. When there is violence, it disrupts the global economic system, it reduces the capacity to produce food, and of course, what we are seeing now, lack of access to food becomes the issue. So violence is a major issue that needs to be tackled. And of course, there needs to be more commitment to also tackling climate change. It's a major cause of the problem we have. Several parts of the world we have droughts. In some parts of the world we have too much rain and all. All of that too will need to be tackled. And of course, there needs to be more robust attempts to expand food production. Mechanized farming, inputs need to be expanded and all. Such that, cumulatively, the world will be able to feed itself. Some have said that increase in population is a factor. Yes, in some way it is. But that is not the major factor, because the population of the world has not increased exponentially compared with, what obtained before now. So these other factors, violence, climate change, full-scale wars like the one between Russia and Ukraine, all of these things are things that need to be tackled for the global food crisis to be resolved.
The report found also that people face starvation and death in Somalia, Afghanistan, Burkina Faso, Haiti, even Nigeria was mentioned. South Sudan and Yemen were also mentioned, but it did not mention Sudan, and we know the crisis going on there will force, thousands of people in need of urgent humanitarian need. Why was Sudan not mentioned in this report?
The reason is simple. The report was for 2022. We are in 2023. The crisis in Sudan broke out just a few weeks ago. If we are to do a report today, Sudan will feature prominently in it, which is why I said earlier that the conflict in Sudan needs to be resolved, needs to be tackled, very quickly, and solution needs to be found very quickly. Otherwise, the condition in Sudan will even be worse than some of the countries listed in that report if a new report were to be done now. So violence is a major issue that needs to be tackled for the global food crisis to be resolved.
All right. Thank you very much. It's David Awora, Professor, Head and Department of History and Strategic Studies from the University of Lagos. Thank you for your time on The World Today.
It's my pleasure.
And when in just a moment, when we return, coronation excitement, royal superfans struggle to contain their excitement ahead of King Charles III coronation. We'll bring you the details. Please join us again. Welcome back. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens confirmed that police have arrested the man suspected of killing one woman and wounding 4 others in a shooting spree at a medical building in Midtown Atlanta, then carjacking a vehicle to flee the scene. The accused gunman, identified as 24-year-old Dion Patterson, a former U.S. Coast Guardsman whom Atlanta police had described earlier as armed and dangerous, was taken into custody north of the city in a suburban Cobb County.
Right now, we've had a successful end to a traumatic day. And today is a day that we can go home and rest easy, that the individual that caused harm in our community is under arrest thanks to this great partnership with Cobb County, Fulton County, City of Atlanta, Georgia State Patrol, and all of these great partners. So I hope that the city, the region rests easy, that he's in custody, but I also hope that we stay vigilant to continue to look at a future where individuals that shouldn't have a gun in possession won't have one, and also that individuals will be brought to justice, and also that we deal with these things that are mental health or easy access to guns. And so tonight, I hope that we rest easier knowing that he is in custody, and this all happened all in one day, from being around noon, and then before the sun was set, he was in handcuffs with Cobb County, and he'll be brought to Fulton County to stand trial. And he's alive to be able to stand trial, and that shows the professionalism and the great training of all law enforcement in this region.
Tens of thousands of protesters marched against rising prices and falling real income due to high inflation in many parts of Germany, calling on the government to take action. Affected by the Ukraine crisis, the continued soaring living prices in Germany have put many citizens under great pressure. Just last year, Germany recorded its highest annual inflation in more than 70 years, as it topped at 7.9%, and that's according to the Federal Statistical Office. And this led to a record year-on-year decline in real wages to 4.1%.
The price of living, I moved here about a year ago, I guess like 20% or something, maybe. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, it depends on what. And yeah, I mean, when I moved here, I went to the supermarket, and for like 50 euros, I got like, full, like I packed my house for like 2 weeks, and now it's like 80. So, it's really changing.
General costs of living in Germany are increasing because of the inflation, because of the war in Ukraine. And a lot of people are struggling right now. And we think that the politicians in Germany don't do enough for the working class. And so we are here to protest against that.
Let's head to Britain now, where police has arrested a man outside Buckingham Palace for throwing what they believe were shotgun cartridges, and officers also carried out a controlled explosion in the area days before King Charles's coronation ceremony. London's Metropolitan Police said in an updated statement that the man has been arrested on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon after he was searched and a knife was found on him. The statement adds that police were not currently treating the matter as related to terrorism. Police and security services are preparing for King Charles's coronation on Saturday, which is expected to see large crowds line the streets of London, and heads of state from around the world attend the formal ceremony. Buckingham Palace said neither the king nor his wife Camilla were at the palace at the time of this incident. And finally on the program, Margaret Tyler's fascination with the British royal family began as a child when she would cut out photos of now King Charles III and his sister, Princess Anne. The 79-year-old, just 4 years older than the British monarch, is among the royal superfans who cannot contain her excitement for his coronation on May the 6th. Tyler's obsession with Princess Anne and King Charles has filled her home with northwest London, with rooms named after members of the royal family and little spaces to move among piles of royal memorabilia, also including flags, photos, and china.
Do you think those are the two brides there?
No, I'm sorry. I've had somebody here once, a man here who didn't like the royal family. I felt like saying, if you don't like it, don't come here then, you know. I mean, don't come and moan. But, yeah, well, people do and people don't. You can't make them, can you? I mean, I love them, I adore them. But then I haven't got any brothers or sisters. And I think that made a difference, really. I sort of followed them. Princess Anne is a toddler, really. Prince Charles, a bit older. So, really, I do enjoy what I do. I used to cut out photographs of him and Princess Anne in newspapers when Charles was obviously the older one, and he was about, should we say, 4 or 5, and Princess Anne was about 2. So I've been doing it a long time. But I enjoy it, to me. I mean, some people smoke, some people drink, some people go on holiday. I don't do any of those things.
I was with my mum and uncle, and they blew the windows in, and we all came out, and believe it or not, a while after the Queen came along to look at the damage, and she gave us a wave, and I waved back, and there's a little picture up there somewhere where that's where I was when I was 3 years old, so that's where it all started.
How exciting. Well, if you enjoy it, then keep doing it. But that's how we round up the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Please stay safe.